First, let's start with this case. Today is my 35 husband's birthday. He wanted to celebrate by going out to eat, but our kids, 3F, 2F, have been sick all week, and I've barely slept. Only about 3 to 4 hours in a 48-hour period while taking care of them. I started feeling sick on Friday at work, and between the lack of sleep and whatever bug I've caught, I feel absolutely miserable. This is the sickest I've been in years. Last night, I told my husband that I didn't think we'd be able to go out to eat, and suggested we order takeout instead. He agreed. After a rare, luxurious 6 hours of sleep, I woke up this morning still feeling terrible. I took some Tylenol, managed to change and feed the kids, and then made an effort to celebrate his birthday in a small way. I stuck a candle in a cookie, we sang to him, and he opened a couple of simple presents. Afterward, I told him I needed to go back to bed and rest. He scoffed, but didn't say much at first. Later, he asked me to make breakfast for everyone. I told him I couldn't even get up. When the Tylenol wears off, I have chills and feel so weak I can barely move. When it's working, I'm still only able to scroll my phone for short bursts. Throughout the day, he's been visibly annoyed, huffing and puffing around the house as if I planned to get sick on his birthday. He's been taking care of the kids, but it's clear he's upset about it. At one point, it felt like he was accusing me of faking how sick I am. Update: it's now Christmas Eve, and I'm still extremely sick. Despite how I feel, I pushed myself too hard today preparing for tomorrow, because I want my kids to have a decent Christmas morning. The only thing I could muster the energy to cook was grilled cheese sandwiches with frozen fries and chicken nuggets. My kids don't care. They're happy with simple food. But it's far from the grand holiday dinner we'd normally have. At 9 a.m., I told my husband I wouldn't be cooking a fancy meal and that he'd need to cook for himself or order takeout. He ended up making something simple for himself after the kids went to bed. Meanwhile, the kids and I had Christmas Eve grilled cheese. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Marriage and parenting is a partnership, and you don't get vacation days just because it is your birthday. It sucks that his birthday plans fell through, but sometimes that's just how life goes. You're not in the wrong. First, it's not watching your kids, it's parenting your kids. Period, end of story. Second, you're sick and can barely exist right now. You need rest to recover. Finally, you can go out for a belated celebration when everybody is not sick. I mean, it sucks, but it sucks for everyone. You're not in the wrong. Being a halfway decent parent involves making sacrifices. Some of them just suck to make. Does he usually expect you to be the only one giving things up to care for the kids? Or is the combination of you being sick and his birthday happening on the same day bringing out an abnormal bit of ugliness from him? Next up, today, I, 19F, went to Sephora to shop for Christmas gifts. This is a large Sephora in a major American city, so it was quite crowded. I was swatching some blushes to pick one out for my sister, standing close to the shelf to leave plenty of room for others to walk by. While I was browsing, I suddenly felt someone standing very close behind me. So close that they were literally touching me. They reached right in front of my face to grab one of the products without saying, "Excuse me," or anything. I'm Australian. My family moved to the US a few years ago, and I consider it rude when people invade my personal space like that. I turned around and gave her a look, hoping she'd take the hint and back off. She gave me a nasty look but took a small step away, so I figured it was resolved. A minute later, the same thing happened. She got so close that her stomach was literally touching my back. This made me very uncomfortable, so I said, "Excuse me, personal space," in what I thought was a polite tone. She responded rudely, telling me to calm down, and then started mocking me to her friend in a bad British accent, which was funny because I'm not even British. She also said something to her friend in another language, but I couldn't tell what it was. I replied, "I can hear you mocking me. Maybe learn some manners? Just say excuse me next time." That seemed to make her and her friend angrier, and they continued mocking me. At that point, I decided to walk away. I later told my mom about it, and she said I could have handled it more nicely. In hindsight, I could have just moved over and not engaged, especially since I might have been unintentionally blocking part of the shelf. However, I was annoyed that she didn't say, "Excuse me." and stood so close that it made me physically uncomfortable. I also wondered if it might have been a cultural difference since they were speaking both English and another language. As someone who isn't originally from the US, I understand that ideas about personal space vary. What do you all think? Was I out of line? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. As a fellow Aussie with no tolerance for rude people, she's lucky it wasn't me she was doing it to, because I only asked nicely once. After that, you caught both barrels, and there's a 100% chance that C word is getting used. She got off lightly. You're not in the wrong. American here. And leaning in so close that you are touching the other person is not okay. If she needed something in front of you, she could have just said, "Excuse me," and I am sure you would have given her the space to get her item. You're not in the wrong. Sounds like she does need to learn some manners. Even if you were inadvertently blocking her access, a polite person would just say, "Excuse me," and it wouldn't have happened twice. Her reaction shows a lack of self-awareness and basic class. I am American, and I would have been pissed as well. This isn't cultural, she is just rude. Next up, I want to start by saying that I'm incredibly grateful to even have the opportunity to get a car at my age. I know many people don't have this privilege. That said, I feel angry and disappointed with how my dad, 52M, and stepmom, 48F, handled this situation. Recently, my dad bought my stepmom a new Porsche. In exchange, he told her that she would need to give her old car to the first kid who got their driver's license. I, 19, recently passed my test, and as promised, the car is now parked outside for me to use. However, there's one big issue. My stepmom canceled the insurance on the car, which I can understand. But today, my dad and stepmom sat me down and told me I'm absolutely not allowed to get into any accidents with the car. Then they dropped a bombshell. They revealed that the car isn't insured. They told me that if I get into an accident, I'll be responsible for all the costs and could potentially be in serious debt for the rest of my life. Hearing this made me feel scared and angry. I thought, isn't there any way to handle this that doesn't involve putting me, a 19-year-old, at such a huge financial risk? I did some research and discovered that in the country where I live, it's illegal to drive without insurance. Unfortunately, I can't afford to pay for the insurance myself. Now I feel stuck. I put so much effort into getting my license, but I'm essentially unable to drive the car because of the financial risk and legal issues. I'm frustrated because this feels like a half promise. They gave me a car but didn't consider how I'd realistically be able to drive it safely and legally. At the same time, I'm questioning if I'm being entitled by feeling this way. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. If you can't afford insurance, taxes, gas, and maintenance on the car, you shouldn't accept the car. Don't drive the car until you have it insured. You're not in the wrong. I'm not sure how parents can believe that forbidding you from having an accident will prevent an accident. Also, I'm curious, who are the other kids that would compete to get this car? Most parents don't make an offer of first one to get a license gets the car if the kids are a 19-yo and a 9-yo. Do you have other siblings, step half full, that are close in age and could have gotten their license before you did? Is that sibling a more favored sibling? Like, if they got their license first, would the insurance be paid for them? If you are able to, take the car and insure it so you can drive. Otherwise, pass on this generosity. You're not in the wrong for refusing to set yourself up for years of misery if you get into an accident with a no insurance. Do not drive without insurance, ever. Accept the car, have them sign the title over to you and get it registered in your name. Here are some options. Approach them about getting on one of their policies, and you pay the difference. This is typically cheaper than a standalone policy at your age. Next option, do you work? Part-time? Pick up extra time or second job to pay for what you want. You are 19. You want something. You start working towards it. Another option, sell the car. If it's mom's older car and she just upgraded to a Porsche, it's probably nice. So sell it, take the money, and buy a cheap, reliable car, and use the additional funds to cover insurance and maintenance. Go on a website like AutoTrader to find out what it is worth so you don't get taken advantage of. Then check out prices of reliable, cheaper vehicles to see what the difference is. Do not drive without insurance, ever. Just don't get into an accident is crap advice. Next up, my husband and I have been together for 11 years and have 2 kids. But recently he made it clear that we're no longer in a relationship. This stems from an argument we had where he and his mom blamed me for something without giving me the chance to explain. He was at fault too, but they were upset that I stood up for myself. Unfortunately, this argument happened in front of our kids. My oldest even took my hand and reassured me, saying, "It's going to be okay." Since then, I've been taking the kids to visit him at his house, even though he changed the locks. Our kids don't understand why they can't get inside anymore. I didn't want him to accuse me of keeping the kids away, but whenever I try to discuss custody arrangements, it's never the right time for him. He refuses to talk outside, but also doesn't want to discuss things calmly, often trying to argue in front of the kids. I know this isn't ideal, and I feel like an idiot for putting the kids in situations where they see him being so hostile. Despite everything, I've tried to keep things civil for the sake of our kids. I spent Thanksgiving and attended another family event with him and his extended family. His relatives were happy to see me with the kids and even wondered where he was. Turns out, he chose to go to a friend's get-together instead of spending time with us, which only reinforced how much he can't stand being around me. Recently, he asked if he could take the kids on a trip. I asked if I could come along to help with the kids, but he said no. He paid for his family to go on the trip, but not me. I told him I'd think about it since the kids had already made plans with friends while school was out. When I asked the kids if they wanted to go on the trip, they said no. Every time I asked, they said no. Even after I told them it was okay if they wanted to go. Their grandmother, the same one I argued with, but have since made amends, asked why I wasn't letting them go on the trip. I explained we already had plans, and she laughed it off, saying, "They have to have sleepovers this weekend. They can do that another time." But the truth is, we only have this weekend and the next before school starts, and I didn't want to force them to change their plans if they didn't want to go. It's been a challenging time, especially after our youngest's recent birthday party. Some guests didn't even realize my husband was there, as he didn't make an effort to engage. I planned a birthday dinner and invited him, not expecting him to show up because I was there. He did attend, but it turns out the only reason he came was because his mom asked him to. I feel stuck trying to balance keeping the peace, prioritizing my kids' happiness, and dealing with a husband who is distant and hostile. Am I making the right choices? Or am I failing to handle this situation the best I can? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. Just find a lawyer and work out custody through them. It's not fun, but it's better than being at the mercy of your ex and his mother. Sounds like he locked you out of your home. Judges don't look kindly on that. I'm curious, how long ago was this fight? Where are you living now? How are you supporting yourself and your kids? You're not in the wrong. Step 1, get a lawyer. Step 2, divorce. Since it doesn't sound like that's been done, if it has or you weren't married, skip this step. Step 3. Step 4, child support. He gets 0 say in any of this happening. Do it. Take his ass to court and get every cent that the judge will give you, and the house he locked you out of. Stop facilitating for him. He can make time for his kids on his own. Stop spending time with him, his family. Focus on you and your kids because he sounds like a crappy father. You're not in the wrong. And absolutely do not let him take the children out of the country during this period. You may never see them again until they're 18 and able to break away from his control. And sometimes by then, they may be brainwashed and want nothing to do with you. Get a lawyer immediately, especially since he locked you out of the house, before he has a chance to accuse you of abandonment. Do not share plans with his family either. They are not on your side. You need to get serious and start gearing up for war.